Far from the madding crowd. By Thomas Hardy. Thomas Hardy, born on June 2, 1840 in Dorchester, English novelist and poet. Attended school at Bockhampton at the age of 8. Trained as an architect before moving to London in 1862. Enrolled as a student in King's College, London. His poems 1912 to 1913 reflect the death of his wife Emma. Influenced both in his novels and poetry by Romanticism. Novels concern tragic characters struggling against their passions and social circumstances. Most of the works are set in the semi-fictional region of Wessex. Far from madding crowd, The Mayor of Casterbridge, Tess of D'Urberville and Jude the Obscure are some of the major novels. Became ill with pleurisy and died on January 11, 1928. Far from the madding crowd. Hardy's fourth novel published in 1874. Originally appeared anonymously as a monthly serial in Cornhill magazine. Set in Hardy's Wessex in rural southwest England. Deals with the themes of love, honor, and betrayal. Portrays the harsh realities of a farming community in Victorian England. Novel has been dramatized several times and nominated for Oscar in 1967 for the film, adapted and directed by John Schlesinger. Took the title from Thomas Gray's poem Elegy written in a country churchyard. Characters: Gabriel Oak, the novel's hero, Bathsheba's first suitor. Bathsheba Everdeen, an independent and charismatic young woman. Sergeant Francis, Frank, Troy, handsome, young and irresponsible man. William Boldwood, prosperous middle-aged farmer. Fanny Robin, a young orphan servant girl. Mrs. Hurst, Bathsheba's aunt who lives near Gabriel's farm. Liddy Smallberry, a young woman who works in the farm of Bathsheba's uncle. Joseph Poorgrass, Jan Coggan, Mark Clark, Laban Tall and Cainy Ball, employees in Everdeen Farm. Summary. Novel opens on a December, introducing Gabriel Oak in his late 20s, a shepherd having his own farm near the town Norcombe. Notices a young woman in a wagon having argument with the driver over the rate and he paid for her. At night sees an unexpected light near his hut, goes there and finds two women tending a sick cow, one is the same woman he met. Next morning he returns and brings her the hat she lost previous windy night. A few days later he is risking suffocation in his hut and is rescued by the same woman and he learns her name is Bathsheba Everdeen. Oak decides to propose her and goes to her aunt Mrs. Hurst's house to meet her, bringing with him a baby lamb as a gift. Meets Mrs. Hurst and she says that Bathsheba has many suitors. As she is not in love with him and as she is not convinced with the proposal and suggests him to marry a wealthy woman. Gabriel, after few days, learns that Bathsheba has moved to the town of Weatherbury. One night his 200 sheep have been driven off the edge of a cliff by a sheepdog and had a huge financial loss and is fully bankrupt. In February, he moves to the town of Casterbridge to find a job as a bailiff or shepherd, but none hires him. So he decides to move to another fair in the town of Shottsford. He walks through the town of Weatherbury where he witnesses an outbreak of fire at a nearby farm which is threatening to spread. Gabriel helps other farm workers to control the fire. The owner too observes Gabriel's hard work and thanked him. The owner is Bathsheba who has inherited the farm from her uncle, is convinced by other workers to hire Gabriel and she agrees. Gabriel moves to his room and sees a woman who gives him directions and asks not to tell any. Gabriel then moves to a pub where he meets many farm workers who know his father and grandfather. One farm worker informs the bailiff is caught of stealing and is fired. Fanny Robins, a young servant, is missing and Bathsheba is tensed. Bathsheba instructs other farm workers and also the soldiers of Casterbridge to look for Fanny. Next day Liddy, her servant, informs Mr. Boldwood, a prosperous farmer, has arrived there to see her and to inquire about Fanny's disappearance, but Bathsheba refuses as she has not dressed up. After she gets ready she meets the farm workers and distributes the wages and announces that she is not going to appoint a bailiff. Bathsheba asks whether anyone knows about Fanny. She is informed that Fanny is at Casterbridge and has moved to the town of Melchester following her sweetheart. Bathsheba goes to Corn Market to display her farm products, where she is the subject of much male attention. There she meets a handsome man, and from Liddy she comes to know it is Boldwood, who had previously called upon her. On the day before Valentine's, Liddy and Bathsheba chatting. Liddy suggests Bathsheba to send a valentine to Boldwood. Bathsheba is annoyed as Boldwood is not showing interest on her. They use a coin to toss and then send the anonymous valentine to Boldwood. In Melchester, Fanny meets his lover Sergeant Frank Troy and asks him when they will get married. Troy assures the marriage and tells her that he will visit her soon. Boldwood, excited to receive valentine, mistakenly opens the letter addressed to Gabriel, which is sent by Fanny. Boldwood meets Gabriel in the pub and gives the letter and money to him and informs she is soon getting married to Troy. Seeking help from Gabriel, Boldwood identifies the anonymous valentine is from Bathsheba. In early May, Boldwood meets Bathsheba and asks her to marry him. Bathsheba refuses and then consults Gabriel, who tells her to marry Boldwood and not to play pranks on him. Bathsheba gets angry and dismisses him from his job. Next day, the workers inform Bathsheba that sheep in the farm have poisoned themselves and are going to die if not cared specially. All ask her to call Gabriel back, as he alone can rescue the sheep. She sends a letter to Gabriel, which he refuses first and then accepts. In June, during sheep shearing, Boldwood comes to meet Bathsheba. The farm workers think they will get married soon. They had a supper after sheep shearing, and Bathsheba tells Boldwood that she needs time and will answer him by harvest time. That night, while inspecting the farm, Bathsheba encounters a man in military dress who helps her untangling the knot of her skirt, which hooked onto the spur of his boot, and he flirts with her. From Liddy, Bathsheba know it is Troy, who is a wealthy man from a good family and is known as a flirt and a ladies' man. A week after shearing, Troy arrives there and helps the farmers to load hay, and he approaches Bathsheba and the two flirts. Next day, she asks him to perform his sword exercises, and they plan to meet evening in secret. They meet and he performs his skill and then kisses her before leaving, which makes Bathsheba confused. Gabriel, on an evening walk, tells Bathsheba to marry Boldwood, which she rejects. Gabriel asserts that he loves her and so she may marry Boldwood or anyone else other than Troy, as he is not trustworthy. She gets angry and asks him to leave, and she meets Troy. She writes to Boldwood that she is not going to marry him. The servants gossip that she is going to marry Troy. She says Liddy that she is in love with Troy. Fearing the visit of Boldwood, Bathsheba plans to be away for few days and thinks to visit Liddy's sister. On her walk she meets Boldwood and says she has no feelings for him. Boldwood gets angry and accuses Troy and says if he ever catches him he will punish him, claiming Troy has seduced and manipulated her. Bathsheba is scared. She thinks to ride to Bath and meet Troy and end the relationship with him, and then to visit Liddy's sister. That night, while Bathsheba comes back to take the horse, Mary Ann, a servant, wakes and thinks a theft has happened and alerts. Gabriel and Coggan chases and find it is Bathsheba, and she tells that she needs to go to Bath urgently, and then the two return. After some weeks, Cainy Ball comes back to the farm and informs Gabriel that he has seen Bathsheba and Troy in Bath. Same night, Bathsheba and Liddy come back to the farm. Boldwood sees Troy arriving his lodging and leaving short time later with a bag of possessions. On road, Boldwood confronts Troy and tells him if he has not interrupted he might have married Bathsheba. He also proposes if Troy marry Fanny and leaves Weatherbury, he will give him a sum of money, which Troy accepts. Bathsheba arrives, and as they have planned to meet Troy, Boldwood, realizing she has involved in sexual relationship with Troy, asks Troy to marry her. Troy shows the proof that he has already married to Bathsheba. In the farmhouse, Coggan and Gabriel see Troy and realize they are married. Troy greets them in a friendly way and plans to renovate the farmhouse. Gabriel is grief-stricken and disappointed and suspicious of the future of the farm. After few weeks, in August, the harvest supper is celebrated. Gabriel foresees a storm and informs Troy that much of the harvest has been left out and unprotected. Troy ignores Gabriel, and as Gabriel is not interested in drinking and on seeing all other workers fully drunk, he leaves the party. Gabriel knows the crops will be ruined, and so he alone tries to protect them. Bathsheba, on seeing this, joined with him. Bathsheba explains him that she went to Bath to end the relationship with Troy, but worried about her reputation and becoming jealous, she married him. Gabriel works all night to finish the task of protecting the crops. In morning, Gabriel meets Boldwood, who is distracted by the marriage of Bathsheba, has not protected his crops and is ruined. In October, while driving home from town, Bathsheba and Troy encounters a woman and ask for direction. The woman, recognizing Troy, collapses and he speaks to her alone. It is Fanny, to whom Troy gives some money and asks her to go to Casterbridge, where he will meet her on Monday. While walking, she is exhausted and manages to reach a building on the edge of town, where she is taken inside. On reaching the farmhouse, Troy asks for money. Bathsheba finds a lock of hair in his watch and enquires. Troy tells it is the hair of a woman he was engaged to before marriage, and they have an argument. The next morning, Troy has gone off to Casterbridge. Bathsheba learns from Liddy that Fanny have blonde hair. Bathsheba from Gabriel and Boldwood learns that Fanny is dead and sends Joseph to fetch the body of her. Bathsheba from the servants came to know that Fanny reached the workhouse in town on the previous day from Melchester. Joseph arrives with the coffin too late, and the parson tells the funeral will have to take place the next day. Gabriel rubs out the words that have been written on the coffin. It states Fanny Robbins and child. Bathsheba asks Liddy the reason for Fanny's death. Liddy tells she heard a rumor that Fanny gave birth shortly before she died, and the baby is also in the coffin. Later, Bathsheba opens the coffin and finds the corpse of a tiny baby and realizes that it is Troy's and Fanny's illegitimate child. Troy returns and sees what is lying in the coffin. Troy kisses Fanny's corpse. Bathsheba becomes jealous. Troy tells he loves Fanny more than he ever loved Bathsheba. Bathsheba flees until the body is removed. Troy also left the house. Troy sets up to meet Fanny on Monday, but not finding her, he returns home late only to see the corpse of her. After Bathsheba flees, he moved to town to get a Hackney marble tombstone for Fanny. Troy sets up everything, and of rain the arrangement was ruined. Troy left the churchyard and the town short time later. Bathsheba decides to visit the grave and finds Gabriel there and observes the marble tombstone, which is collapsed, and they both work to arrange and leave it in a good condition. Troy goes to a deserted beach near Budmouth, swims and is dragged into the sea and is rescued by soldiers. Lost his clothes and money, the soldiers ask him to join them on their upcoming voyage, which he accepts. Word comes to the farm that Troy is drowned and his clothes were found. Bathsheba is treated as widow and Boldwood raises hope to marry. After some months, Boldwood asks Liddy whether Bathsheba intends to marry, for which she replies, maybe after 6 years. In autumn, almost a year after Fanny's death, Bathsheba and workers moves to a sheep fair where they met Troy in a circus team. Troy sailed to America and returns thinking to unite with Bathsheba, but scared of her anger, and so joined a circus team. Troy is dismayed to find Bathsheba and Boldwood among the audience, and he tries to perform undetected. Pennywise, former bailiff, notices and hints it to Bathsheba. Troy finds Pennywise and arranges to meet him to protect the secret. On the way back, Boldwood asks Bathsheba to marry him, which she tells that she may decide it during Christmas time. Bathsheba discusses this with Gabriel, whom tells her to marry as he wants her to be married by someone who loves her. On Christmas Eve, Boldwood arranges a party. Bathsheba is anxious that Boldwood will expect her to an engagement. Troy, from Pennywise, comes to know the rumor that Bathsheba may marry Boldwood. Troy decides to attend the party in disguise. In the Christmas party, Boldwood asks Bathsheba about the marriage, for which she replies that she will marry him in 6 years. In the meantime, Troy enters in and discloses his disguise and asks Bathsheba to join him. Boldwood in huge rage shoots Troy and tries to shoot himself, which is stopped by the servants. Boldwood goes to the local police office and turns himself in. Gabriel rushes to the spot and moves to find a doctor. When he returns, he finds Troy's body is taken to the farmhouse and Bathsheba has washed and prepared the corpse for burial. Boldwood is sentenced to death, but many local townspeople argue he should be insane and thus not criminally responsible. In March, judges meet to determine, and Boldwood is sentenced to life in prison. Troy is buried in the churchyard near Fanny. Gabriel tells Bathsheba that he is moving to California in the spring and gives a notice in winter that he will be leaving by March. That night she meets Gabriel and asks the reason for leaving. Gabriel says he is leasing Boldwood's farm, and also there is rumor that he is going to marry her, so better not to be there. Gabriel admits that he still loves her and both realize they mutually love each other. Bathsheba is experienced with the loss and betrayal and is no longer proud and willful as she was portrayed in the beginning. After a short time, Bathsheba agrees to marry Gabriel. They got married in a private ceremony with only a few close friends present. Gabriel comes to live with Bathsheba in the Everdene farm. Novel ends with an optimistic view of a happy and loving marriage. For more videos, like, share, subscribe. Thank you.